Women of Reddit, when did you first notice that men were looking at you in a sexual way? How old were you and how did it make you feel? I was 16, standing in the grocery store. There was a table up against the wall near the exit where you could pack your groceries into your bag, which is what I was doing. Out of nowhere, a man that I would guess to be 50 at minimum grabbed my shoulder and spun me around, looking at me with a creepy smile saying, "Oh, I thought you were a pretty girl." I'm a guy. I had long, wavy, fairly girly hair at the time and have always been quite skinny. I shouldn't technically be answering in this thread, but I'll never forget that moment because it creeped me out. I've never been more protective of my two sisters since that moment.
This is incredibly funny and tragic all at the same time. I too was mistaken for a girl when I had long wavy hair, except I only fell and someone said, "Is she okay?" And then I turned and they saw my beard.
I was 11. I had started to grow my boobs, and my step-grandfather cornered me in my parents' room one day. He stuck his tongue in my mouth and grabbed my boobs. I didn't know what to do, so I pushed him away a little, said, "Abuelito, did you want a hug?" and hugged him. Ugh. I was scared I was going to get in trouble and that my parents would think I was making it up. They believed me, but just told me to avoid him for the rest of his stay. I was probably 11 or so. I remember sitting at school in a science class, and some guys used to throw pens and other shit on the ground next to me, so, naturally, I would lean down and pick it up for them. It took me a while to understand why they were laughing when I would do that. Turns out, they were stealing glances down my shirt. I just remember the laughing making me feel so uncomfortable. I used to play Dance Dance Revolution a lot when I was 11 to 12. Good enough to be coordinated at it. I used to think all the guys that would hang out at the arcade were watching me play because I was good, or they were waiting their turn. Nope, it's because I developed early and they liked watching my boobs bounce. It was mortifying when I found out a few years later after I befriended one of them. I will just post what Tana Face said on this topic, funny and sad at the same time, mostly sad. When did you first feel like a grown woman and not a girl? We wrote down our answers and shared them, first in pairs, then in larger groups. The group of women was racially and economically diverse, but the answers had a very similar theme. Almost everyone first realized they were becoming a grown woman when some dude did something nasty to them. I was walking home from ballet and a guy in a car yelled, "Lick me." I was babysitting my younger cousins when a guy drove by and yelled, "Nice ass." There were pretty much zero examples like, I first knew I was a woman when my mother and father took me out to dinner to celebrate my success on the debate team. It was mostly men yelling shit from cars. Are they a patrol sent out to let girls know they've crossed into puberty? If so, it's working. I developed a little earlier than many of the girls I went to school with. My first experience was actually not with the boys in my class, but with my teammates' fathers looking at me differently and hugging me a little bit too long after I made a nice play. I didn't go to many sleepovers in primary school. Still gives me the heebies. I was about 11 when I started to get wolf whistled waiting for the bus, always by older men in vans, etc., never teenagers or kids that could have been mistaking me for their own age. It was intimidating and made me feel uncomfortable. I tense up whenever a van drove past and feel relief if someone didn't whistle or shout at me. Yep. I actually got the most blatant creeping behavior between the ages of 12 and 14. I had a friend who was very pretty when she was 14-15, but looked about 2 years younger. And that was the age she got the most creeped on. There are a lot of these weirdos who will try shit with a kid that they wouldn't try with a grown woman. Either that, or they're only attracted to kids. Not just kids, but any woman who looks vulnerable. I have an autistic friend. She's very pretty but also very obviously not normal in the way she moves her body and the facial expressions she makes. And the creepers she gets are much nastier, more persistent, and well, creepier than the ones most of my friends are getting now in our mid-20s. They often make it very clear that they don't expect her to be able or willing to stop them/call them out on it. I have heard similar stories from other disabled women too, including those that aren't conventionally attractive. It's the appearance of vulnerability that attracts predators. I remember being in high school and an old guy in a convertible pulling up next to me while I was walking from one store to another in a strip mall. After a simple "Hi, how are you doing" type thing, he asked me if I wanted a ride to where I was going. I said no thanks, and he drove off. I guess I was 14 or 15 at the time. The thing is, this is a classic thing that any parent would freak out if it happened to their daughter. But it happened to pretty much everyone I ever mentioned it to in my teenage circle of gals, and we always just laughed it off. We never realized just how disturbing it is at the time. This, 1999 or 2000. I was 12 and my mom was getting me a cell phone. This was before cell phone were as common for kids to have. I came home with my cell phone and got my first call. It was the young guy who set us up with the phone and the plan. He called to tell me that he thought I was hot and that he has my number since he set me up with my phone. I just small-talked him, being overly nice as I wasn't really sure what to do. My mom noticed me on the phone and asked who I would even be calling. The phone is basically to call her and only her. I told her that the guy that sold us the phone was trying to get a date with me. She grabbed the phone and yelled into it, "She's 10 years old and you should be ashamed. If you ever call again, I'll go to the police." He got off the phone quickly. I looked at my mom and said, "But I'm 12. He needs to feel the additional shame of being a pig." And that was the moment I first noticed that someone was looking at me in a sexual way. My mother ended up going to the store and getting the guy fired. Apparently, this wasn't the first time he used his job to get numbers of women to call. This time he got fired. That was also the year other things occurred, but this was the first. I was 13, and a 20-year-old I knew told me he'd teach me how to give him a blowjob. I didn't know what it was. I told my mom, and she told the principal, who made me feel like I was disgusting. All of my friends turned against me, saying he never said that to me, and I was alone for a while until I moved. Another man, the son of the town judge, propositioned me from his truck. I was 14. When I was 15, my sister's boyfriend groped me in front of my sister and boyfriend. It wasn't a fun puberty. Edit. I just want to say I really appreciate everyone's support. It took a very long time to realize that it wasn't my fault. Oh geez, I didn't say this, I forgot. The guy who said he was going to teach me how to give blowjobs was held back for failing a few years in my school, so he was one of my classmates. All the grades after grade 5 I think were in the same campus, since there was like 200 of us all together. That's why my mom reported him to my shitty principal. When I was 12, we went on a family beach vacation. My uncle, mother's first cousin, would slap me on the butt, casually touch my growing breasts throughout the day, and made jokes that they were getting bigger, while other adults were around. He would make sexual jokes, saying that other young guys by the poolside were noticing me and wanted to date me. One afternoon I was in the hotel room with him and his wife, my mother's half-sister. And he walked up to me, wrapped his arms around me, and started kissing and sucking my neck. I just closed my eyes and covered my face with my hands, not really understanding this unfamiliar style of affection. My aunt was in the room, and once she saw his erection, she said he should change his shorts to wear different pants instead, which he walked away and did. She never intervened to curb his sexualized behavior towards me or my young cousins. We all even slept in the same bed together as a holiday slumber party. One day when he was making comments to me about my breasts, I snapped and told him to stop talking to me like that. He punished me and gave me the silent treatment for the rest of the day. When he had the opportunity while we were paddling around at the beach, he carried me away into the deeper part of the water while I screamed for my mother not to let him take me. None of my aunts or other uncles helped, thinking it was all just a funny joke. I was so afraid. I had to hold on to him so as not to drown. I'm not a strong swimmer. He asked me why I spoke to him in a rude manner earlier that day. He told me to apologize and said he'd only forgive me if I would kiss him. Terrified of being left in the deep water, I kissed him on the cheek, and he brought me back to where the rest of my aunts and uncles were. He established his dominance and control over me that day and continued in this manner for the rest of the vacation. 4 years later, once I had gradually came to understand what sexual abuse and grooming were, I called him up, we live in different countries, and asked him if he remembered that vacation, which he did. I asked him if he continues to treat other children, such as his nieces and nephews, like this. He said yes, and that he loved all his family's children and joked with all of them. I told him that his behavior had made me extremely uncomfortable and had affected me negatively, that it was not okay for him to behave this way towards children or anyone else. I asked him how he would feel if an older man did those same things to his little daughter. He admitted that he wouldn't like that. I thanked him for listening and told him that I had informed my other uncle about his inappropriate behavior and that he was upset with him. He apologized and claimed that he just loves me and saw me as a child at the time, that he didn't think I would interpret his actions in that way. I never quite understood how he could justify getting a hard-on while kissing a 12-year-old scared kid. After some years of space, we're more or less cool now. Thankfully, I only see him every few years. He toned down his behavior and isn't as inappropriate with people. Around age 11, myself and my cousin, she was also 11, were walking from the beach to the cottage in shorts and t-shirts. A car with 3 men began driving slowly next to us, asking for directions and for us to get in to show them where some campground was. We went into a convenience store and used their phone to call our grandmother to come get us. Pre-cell phones. The men were parked in the parking lot and followed our car to the cottage, which was set back from the road, had to go through trees and such to get to it. They parked out on the road by the entrance. My uncle, cousin's father, was told they were parked there and went out with his shotgun to ask if there was any problems. It didn't stick around. From that point on, I became more aware of the yelling out car windows, the stares, the requests to get into vehicles. Seriously, guys, does this ever work?